Few knew that David Bowie's legacy would live on not just in music, but through his son, Duncan Jones, a filmmaker quietly reshaping Hollywood on his own terms. In 2025, Jones stands as a creative force far removed from his father's glam rock shadow, yet his work pulses with the same fearless imagination. From sci-fi epics to thought-provoking dramas, he's building a filmography that demands attention. This is the story of Bowie's heir, not in sequins and stardom, but in ideas, vision, and the relentless pursuit of artistic truth. Duncan Zowie Haywood Jones, known professionally as Duncan Jones, has spent his adult life walking the tightrope between legacy and individuality. As a son of music icon David Bowie and model Angie Bowie, Duncan grew up in a world where creativity was currency and reinvention was expected. Yet instead of following his father into the spotlight, he chose to explore the shadows behind the lens, crafting films that blend human emotion with cerebral science fiction. His journey as a filmmaker mirrors the very essence of Bowie's artistic spirit: boundless curiosity, constant evolution, and a refusal to fit neatly into any box. Jones's breakthrough came in 2009 with Moon, an intimate, low-budget science fiction drama starring Sam Rockwell. When Moon premiered, it didn't just mark the arrival of a talented new director. It announced Duncan Jones as one of the few filmmakers capable of injecting soul into science fiction. The film's quiet, deliberate pacing and its haunting performance from Sam Rockwell revealed a debut filmmaker who wasn't interested in explosions or spectacle, but in human emotion, identity, and loneliness. With its sterile lunar base and existential dread, Moon asked what happens when a person discovers he's not who he thought he was, a theme that struck a nerve with critics and audiences alike. The film earned Duncan the BAFTA Award for Outstanding Debut and placed him in the lineage of cerebral sci-fi storytellers like Ridley Scott and Stanley Kubrick. Yet, as Jones made clear in the years that followed, he had no interest in being trapped by genre expectations or by the burden of living in his father David Bowie's cosmic shadow. His next film, Source Code, 2011, expanded both his ambition and reach. This high-concept thriller starred Jake Gyllenhaal as a soldier forced to relive another man's final 8 minutes aboard a doomed commuter train in order to prevent future attacks. While the setup screamed action blockbuster, Jones treated the premise with the same curiosity and compassion that defined Moon. The repetition of time loops became a metaphor for guilt, fate, and second chances. The movie was a box office success and confirmed that Jones could balance philosophical inquiry with mainstream accessibility. It also suggested something deeper about his artistic temperament: that technology and emotion need not be opposites, but could instead coexist, illuminating what it means to be human in an increasingly mechanized world. Then came Warcraft, 2016. The project that would test Jones's creative resolve. Tasked with adapting one of the most beloved video game franchises ever, he suddenly found himself helming a $160 million production for a massive global audience. The film was visually stunning, brimming with detail and affection for its source material. Yet the critical reception was harsh, dividing fans and reviewers alike. While Warcraft underperformed in the West, it became a global hit in China, earning nearly $500 million worldwide. The experience taught Jones the painful realities of blockbuster filmmaking: studio politics, fan expectations, and the compromises required at that scale. Still, even within the fantasy chaos, traces of his signature empathy remained. His orcs weren't villains but complex creatures struggling with survival and morality, mirroring his fascination with misunderstood outsiders. Rather than retreat after Warcraft, Jones doubled down on his instincts with Mute, 2018, a deeply personal project nearly 2 decades in the making. Set in a futuristic Berlin bathed in neon and moral ambiguity, Mute followed a voiceless bartender searching for his missing girlfriend. It was a strange, mournful film, more mood piece than plot-driven thriller. and one that polarized critics. Yet it offered an unfiltered look at Jones's creative soul, his obsession with world-building, his affection for flawed loners, and his insistence that sci-fi can be a mirror for grief, love, and loss. He described Mute as a spiritual sequel to Moon, and indeed both films share a fascination with identity fractured by technology. Across this arc, from Moon to Mute, Jones's filmography forms a meditation on empathy in the age of machinery. He returns repeatedly to science fiction, not for spectacle, but for introspection, using future worlds to ask timeless human questions. What defines us when memory and identity can be manipulated? How do we find connection in isolation? How does grief reshape who we are? These are the same emotional undercurrents that often flowed through David Bowie's music, from the alien loneliness of Space Oddity to the fragmented personas of The Man Who Fell to Earth. Like his father, Jones uses art to explore the distance between self and society, reality and illusion. In 2024 to 2025, Duncan Jones returned to the spotlight with a project that seemed almost designed for his creative DNA. Rogue Trooper. Adapted from the cult favorite 2000 AD comic series, the film represents not only a new chapter in Jones's career, but also a culmination of everything he's been striving toward since Moon. What immediately set Rogue Trooper apart was its approach. A fully CG animated feature, crafted using Unreal Engine 5 and digital performance capture to translate subtle human expression into a hyper-stylized, war-torn future. For Jones, it's the ideal fusion of art and technology, a project where the grandeur of spectacle meets the intimacy of character. The original Rogue Trooper comic, first published in the early 1980s, follows a genetically engineered soldier fighting on a devastated planet called New Earth, a world poisoned by endless warfare. Betrayed by his own command, the lone survivor of his regiment carries the digital consciousness of his fallen comrades within his rifle, backpack, and helmet, a poetic metaphor for memory, loss, and loyalty amid chaos. The story's tone, bleak yet deeply humane, aligns perfectly with Jones's recurring obsessions: identity, isolation, betrayal, and the blurred boundaries between human and machine. From the first production materials released in mid-2025, it was clear that Jones was embracing a bold, hybrid filmmaking style. Instead of opting for a photorealistic approach, he leaned into stylization: angular lighting, vivid palettes, and heightened textures reminiscent of comic book art, all anchored by the emotional realism of motion-captured performances. Using Unreal Engine 5, a platform more often associated with video game design, allowed Jones to direct the film like a live-action feature, adjusting camera angles, lighting, and pacing in real time. The result, according to early production notes, was an experience that combined the control of animation with the spontaneity of live performance, a technological marriage that echoes Jones's fascination with human emotion expressed through mechanical means. Performance capture has become the heart of Rogue Trooper's aesthetic. Rather than hiding behind CGI gloss, Jones insisted on capturing the micro-expressions and emotional weight of his cast, preserving the authenticity of their performances even within the film's stylized world. The ensemble, featuring Aneurin Barnard as the titular rogue, alongside Haley Atwell, Sean Bean, Jack Lowden, and Asa Butterfield, gives the film a dramatic gravitas rarely seen in animated war epics. By treating the animation process as an extension of live-action acting rather than a substitute for it, Jones bridges the gap between the human and the digital, a theme at the very core of his storytelling. Thematically, Rogue Trooper feels like the natural evolution of Jones's earlier films, where Moon dissected the loneliness of existence and Source Code explored identity across looping realities. Rogue Trooper appears to tackle similar questions against the backdrop of warfare and genetic engineering. The main character's fractured sense of self, haunted by the voices of his deceased comrades, recalls Jones's fascination with consciousness, memory, and the soul's resilience. At the same time, the vast, immersive landscapes and chaotic battles echo the epic scale of Warcraft, suggesting that Jones has found a way to combine the personal intimacy of Moon with the sweeping grandeur of Warcraft. Visually, the film promises to be unlike anything in Jones's catalog. Early images hint at a painterly yet tactile world. Toxic skies, corroded metal wastelands, and glowing biotechnological cities rendered with cinematic realism, but comic book rhythm. The use of Unreal Engine 5 gives every frame the elasticity of a dream, blending science fiction futurism with the gritty immediacy of live combat. For Jones, whose work has always walked the line between empathy and alienation, this technology becomes more than a tool. It's a narrative language, one capable of showing what it means to be human in a digital age. More than just a comeback, Rogue Trooper represents a creative synthesis, the culmination of lessons learned from every phase of Jones's career. After Warcraft's corporate pressures and Mute's divisive reception, this film feels like an act of reclamation, a director returning to the sandbox where he thrives best, crafting worlds that are futuristic yet deeply emotional. Outside of his professional endeavors, Duncan Jones has earned a reputation as one of the more private and grounded figures in the Bowie family orbit. Unlike the flamboyant public persona of his late father, David Bowie, Jones has carved a life defined by understatement, intellect, and quiet determination. He has often acknowledged in interviews that being the son of such a towering cultural icon comes with a mix of privilege and peculiar challenges: the perpetual curiosity of strangers, the subtle assumptions about inherited genius, and the awkward expectation that he somehow reflect or replicate his father's boundary-pushing artistry. Yet Jones has consistently made it clear that his creative identity belongs entirely to him. Over the years, he has addressed this topic with disarming candor and sharp humor, often using wit to diffuse the reverence or fascination surrounding his lineage. When asked about living in Bowie's shadow, he tends to sidestep melodrama, framing the situation instead as a test of personal integrity and creative independence. "You can't live trying to meet other people's definitions of success," he once said, a line that neatly captures his attitude toward both art and inheritance. He is deeply aware that his father's name opens certain doors, but he's equally insistent that talent and perseverance must carry the weight thereafter. This attitude has informed every choice of his career, from his debut feature Moon to his more experimental ventures in animation and digital production. Unlike many celebrity offspring who lean into visibility, Jones has long favored craft over celebrity. He rarely courts the spotlight, appearing at film festivals and press junkets only when necessary, and spends much of his time immersed in development work rather than social media chatter. His interviews, when they happen, feel less like performances and more like conversations with an engineer, thoughtful, occasionally prickly, and always focused on process. This stoic professionalism, combined with his penchant for dark humor, makes him seem less like an heir to Bowie and more like a filmmaker of his own making, quietly pursuing stories that fascinate him. His refusal to capitalize on his father's fame has, paradoxically, strengthened his artistic credibility. Film critics often note that Jones's projects reflect a curiosity about human isolation, identity, and moral choice, themes that resonate with Bowie's music but arise from very different places emotionally. Rather than echoing his father's glamour or flamboyance, Jones channels a quiet, methodical intellect into his work. He builds entire worlds, from the confined lunar base of Moon to the neon dystopia of Mute, to explore how individuals confront loneliness, ethical compromise, and the weight of memory. In public, Jones remains disarmingly down to earth. He speaks more about the daily realities of writing and directing than about legacy or stardom, and he often jokes about being just a film nerd who got lucky. Still, it's impossible to ignore how deeply he's aware of his heritage. Rather than running from it, he treats it as a complex inheritance, something to honor without being trapped by. "I'm proud of my dad," he has said. but we had very different callings. That sentiment captures the essence of his life's balance: affection without imitation, distance without denial. As of 2025, Duncan Jones stands as a model of creative self-definition in an industry obsessed with lineage and fame. His career reflects patience over hype, and his private, unassuming manner reinforces that success. For him is not about visibility, but about building work that endures on its own terms. Through a steady refusal to play the role of Bowie's son, he has, almost quietly, fulfilled his father's greatest artistic lesson: to be unafraid of reinvention, even if it means doing it far from the spotlight. What makes Duncan Jones compelling in 2025 isn't a single box office triumph, but a career built on restless experimentation and an unshakable curiosity about how stories work. He isn't the kind of filmmaker who courts spectacle for its own sake. Rather, he treats new technologies as instruments to deepen emotion, to find fresh ways of connecting audiences to character. That ethos, technical innovation serving human feeling, has become his signature. In an era when the lines between cinema, gaming, and digital artistry are increasingly blurred, Jones stands out as one of the few directors capable of navigating those converging worlds without losing his voice. For those expecting a tale of a celebrity son coasting on fame, Duncan Jones has been quietly and stubbornly disappointing. He has refused, from the beginning, to inhabit the ready-made narrative that could have defined him. The privileged heir to David Bowie's legacy, dabbling in art because he could. Instead, every project Jones has undertaken feels like an act of deliberate separation, a refusal to let lineage dictate identity. In 2025, he stands in a position that feels earned and oddly poetic, neither overshadowed by his father's myth nor dependent on it for credibility. He's carved a career that lives and dies by its own creative risks, and that, in itself, may be the truest form of rebellion. Now let's talk about David Bowie. He was more than a musician. He was a cultural force, a shapeshifter artist whose artistry transcended music, fashion, and identity itself. From the set, Bowie was different. He grew up in a modest household, nurtured by parents who recognized his artistic curiosity, but could not foresee the global impact he would have. Early exposure to music, theater, and visual arts fuels his imagination, laying the foundation for a career that will continuously defy expectations and challenge norms. Bowie's early career in the 1960s was a series of experiments. He released several singles and albums under his birth name and early pseudonyms, exploring rock, folk, and music hall influences. It was the 1969 single Space Oddity, coinciding with the Apollo 11 moon landing, that first captured the public imagination. The song's melancholic beauty, haunting narrative, and cinematic feel demonstrated Bowie's ability to merge music with storytelling. He was no longer just a singer, he was a narrator of the human condition, using space and alienation as metaphors for identity, fame, and existential longing. The early 1970s saw Bowie catapult into superstardom through his creation of Ziggy Stardust, a flamboyant, bisexual rock messiah from outer space. The 1972 album The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars was a groundbreaking work, fusing glam rock, science fiction, and theatricality. Ziggy allowed Bowie to explore themes of fame, alienation, and fluid sexuality while creating one of the most iconic visual and musical personas in history. His live performances, marked by extravagant costumes, androgynous makeup, and theatrical gestures, set a new standard for concert spectacle. Ziggy Stardust was both character and commentary, an enduring symbol of rebellion, artistry, and transformation. After retiring Ziggy in 1973, Bowie entered the Aladdin Sane and Diamond Dogs eras, experimenting with darker, more introspective themes while maintaining glam rock sensibilities. By the mid-1970s, he evolved into the Thin White Duke, a persona reflecting both sophistication and inner turmoil, marked by his struggles with cocaine addiction and fame. Station to Station, 1976, exemplified this phase. A complex, European-influenced sound blending funk, soul, and electronic experimentation. The album's centerpiece, the title track, is a sprawling, hypnotic exploration of identity and alienation, signaling Bowie's shift toward more experimental sonic territories. The late 1970s brought perhaps his most artistically audacious period, the Berlin trilogy, Low, Heroes, and Lodger, created with collaborator Brian Eno. This period marked a deliberate departure from mainstream pop, embracing electronic music, ambient soundscapes, and fragmented lyrical structures. Bowie drew inspiration from German krautrock, modernist art, and European avant-garde culture, producing works that were as cerebral as they were emotive. The song Heroes became an anthem of resilience and human aspiration, encapsulating both personal struggle and geopolitical tension during the Cold War. The Berlin trilogy solidified Bowie's reputation not just as a pop icon, but as a visionary artist willing to redefine music itself. The 1980s showcased Bowie's capacity to navigate both commercial and creative success. Let's Dance, 1983, catapulted him into mainstream global recognition, blending rock, funk, and dance pop, and producing hits like the title track and Modern Love. While some critics accused him of pandering to commercial tastes, Bowie's artistry remained intact. He carefully curated every aspect of the album's production, sound, and image. During this decade, he collaborated with legendary artists, including Nile Rodgers, Mick Jagger, Queen, and Iggy Pop, displaying an extraordinary versatility and openness to creative exchange. Bowie's influence extended far beyond music. His acting career demonstrated his fascination with performance and persona. In The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976, Bowie portrayed an alien navigating human society, reflecting themes of isolation and identity that permeated his music. Labyrinth, 1986, showcased his whimsical theatrical side, combining fantasy, storytelling, and music in ways that enchanted generations of fans. Later roles in The Prestige and Basquiat revealed his capacity to inhabit characters with subtlety, depth, and charisma. Bowie's performances were always extensions of his artistic philosophy, the merging of music, theater, and visual storytelling. Fashion was another canvas for Bowie's creativity. From the glitter and androgyny of Ziggy Stardust to the sharp elegance of the Thin White Duke, he consistently challenged gender norms, celebrated individuality, and influenced designers worldwide. His sartorial choices were never mere costume. They were statements of identity, rebellion, and art. Bowie made fluidity, theatricality, and self-expression central to his image, paving the way for countless artists to explore performance and identity without constraint. Bowie's later career continued to defy categorization. Albums such as Outside, 1995, Earthling, 1997, and Reality, 2003, incorporated electronic, industrial, and drum and bass influences, demonstrating his willingness to embrace contemporary sounds while retaining his unique voice. He also leveraged technology and multimedia, using the internet, innovative music videos, and collaborations with visual artists to expand the experience of his work. Bowie was never static. He continuously anticipated and adapted to cultural shifts, ensuring that his artistry remained relevant across generations. In 2013, Bowie released The Next Day, a critically acclaimed return to music after a decade-long hiatus, followed by Black Star in 2016, his final haunting masterpiece. Black Star, released 2 days before his death, confronted mortality with courage, innovation, and a deeply personal vision. Its blending of jazz, rock, and avant-garde elements reaffirmed Bowie's status as an artist committed to evolution and experimentation until the very end. His death on January 10, 2016, from liver cancer, stunned the world, but his influence continues to resonate. Bowie's legacy is immeasurable, and it is being carefully preserved and championed by his son, Duncan Jones. As a filmmaker and creative visionary in his own right, Duncan has worked to honor his father's artistic spirit while building his own career. He often speaks about Bowie's influence on his approach to storytelling, risk-taking, and creative expression. Beyond personal reflection, Duncan has actively ensured that David Bowie's music, art, and cultural contributions continue to be celebrated responsibly, protecting his father's work from misrepresentation while guiding projects, exhibitions, and posthumous releases. Through Duncan's stewardship, Bowie's legacy remains vibrant, relevant, and accessible to new generations of fans, ensuring that the transformative power of his art endures well into the future. What do you think about David Bowie's son, Duncan Jones? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.